After Star Wars was released, it became apparent that my story, however many films it took to tell, was only one of thousands that could be told about the characters who inhabited its galaxy. But these were not the stories that I was destined to tell. Instead, they would spring from the imagination of other writers, inspired by the glimpse of a galaxy that Star Wars provided. Today, it is an amazing, if unexpected, legacy of Star Wars that so many gifted writers are contributing new stories to that saga. George Lucas, from the introduction of A Splinters of the Mind's Eye, 1996. Welcome back to the Skywalker Files. From a certain point of view, I'm your host, Rockwell, and this is the podcast where we dive into the tangled hyperspace lanes of the Star Wars expanded universe, one novel, comic, and obscure datapad at a time. In our last transmission, we followed Jedi Masters Quill and Voss and Elia Secure through treachery, memory loss, and the emotional turmoil in Rites of Passage. But this week, we turn our focus to a new generation and a new kind of chaos. Today, we're venturing into the first numbered installment of Jude Watson's Jedi Quest series, The Way of the Apprentice. This is where the story of Obi-Wan Kenobi and his teenage Padawan, Anakin Skywalker, truly begins to unfold. Set between The Phantom Menace and Attack of the Clones, the book explores the often fragile dynamic between Master, still haunted by the death of Qui-Gon Jinn, and the Padawan, burdened by expectations no child should have to bear. Together, they're learning that the path of the Jedi is not simply about lightsabers and meditation. It's about patience, empathy, and surviving missions where diplomacy is more dangerous than battle. In a story of ambition, jealousy, and uneasy realization that not every Jedi follows the same way, and for Anakin Skywalker, that difference will prove fateful. Jedi Quest: The Way of the Apprentice was written by Jude Watson and published by Scholastic in March of 2001. It marked the beginning of a 10-book series following the formative years of Anakin Skywalker under the tutelage of Obi-Wan Kenobi, a stretch of the timeline that had, until then, existed mostly in the shadows. Watson, known for her thoughtful character work and ability to weave emotional nuance into Jedi mythos, uses the series to explore the delicate balance between mentorship and destiny. Her writing sits at the fascinating crossroads between children's adventure fiction and psychological study, capturing not just missions and battles, but the internal storms brewing beneath Jedi calm. In universe, The Way of the Apprentice is set roughly 4 years after The Phantom Menace, when the Republic is still outwardly stable, and the Clone Wars remain an ominous glimmer in the horizon. The Jedi Order stands as proud as ever, its halls filled with optimism, diplomacy, and the occasional teenage Padawan with authority issues. At this point in his life, Anakin Skywalker is about 13 years old, still adjusting to temple life and the rigid discipline of the Jedi training. Obi-Wan, barely in his 20s, is struggling just as much, not with the Force, but with how to teach someone whose potential is both astonishing and deeply unsettling. The Way of the Apprentice sets the tone for what's to come in the series, not about grand galactic wars, but the small, personal failures and triumphs that ultimately shape the fate of a galaxy. At 13, Anakin Skywalker is already a study in contradictions. He's the most gifted Padawan in the Temple, and perhaps the least at ease there. Jude Watson portrays him as brilliant, impulsive, aching to prove himself. Anakin's emotions run hot as his lightsaber, and while the intensity gives him strength, it also isolates him. He's the chosen one, but he's also an outsider, a boy who came to the temple too late and fears he'll never truly belong. Here we begin to see the shape of the man he will become: fiercely loyal, deeply emotional, and terrified of failure. His frustration is born of arrogance and insecurity, a need for approval from both his peers and his master. Then there's Obi-Wan Kenobi, still in his mid-20s. He finds himself facing the daunting task of teaching someone who refuses to fit the Jedi mold. His calm, disciplined approach contrasts sharply with Anakin's raw instinct and emotion. Watson shows us a young man who is both wise beyond his years and quietly uncertain. A Jedi who wants to do right by his master's dying wish, but doesn't always know how. There's an underlying melancholy to Obi-Wan's betrayal, a sense that he's trying to bridge a gap between tradition and destiny, between what the Jedi expect and what Anakin is capable of becoming. He's learning that mentorship isn't about control, it's about trust. Now, enter Ferris Olin, a Padawan who embodies everything the Order praises. He's steady, obedient, and maddeningly composed. Naturally, Anakin can't stand him. Ferris doesn't mean to antagonize Anakin, his very existence does. He's the perfect counterpoint, the student who succeeds by following rules rather than breaking them. The rivalry is the pulse of the way of the Apprentice. Through Ferris, Anakin's flaws and virtues are thrown into sharp relief. He's not jealous of Ferris's skills, he's jealous of his acceptance. Ferris is the Jedi Anakin thinks he's supposed to be, but can never quite become. Alongside them are True Veld and Dara Thel Tanis, two fellow Padawans who offer a more grounded look at the temple life. True, Anakin's loyal friend, provides balance, someone who accepts Anakin as he is, flaws and all. Dara, meanwhile, is empathetic and confident, acting as a bridge between Anakin and the rest of the group. Together, True and Dara give the story a sense of camaraderie amid the rivalry, reminding us that not every lesson comes from a master. Some come from friends who understand that it means to struggle, to grow, and to fail together. Jedi Quest: The Way of the Apprentice opens not with blazing lightsabers or high speed chases, but with something far quieter and far deadlier. The Jedi are sent to the planet Radnor, where a devastating biohazard has swept through the population, leaving death and panic in its wake. The outbreak has divided the planet into two zones: a clear sector, where the healthy have gathered in fear, and the contaminated, one where the sick are left behind to die. Obi-Wan Kenobi and Anakin Skywalker arrive alongside other Jedi Masters and their Padawans to assist the evacuation effort. It's a mission meant to test not just their courage, but their compassion. As one might expect, it quickly becomes a lesson in how differently these two virtues can manifest. The situation on Radnor is managed by Galen, a civic leader overseeing the evacuation from the clear sector, and his sister, Curry, a scientist and healer who refuses to abandon those trapped in the contaminated zone. Curie is dedicated, selfless, and entirely unwilling to leave her patients behind, a sharp contrast to her brother's more pragmatic approach. While Galen coordinates logistics from a safe distance, Curry risks her life daily among the dying, trying to discover a way to stop the contagion. When the Jedi Masters travel into the contaminated zone to assist Curie, they become cut off from their Padawans, leaving Anakin, Ferris, True, and Dara to operate on their own in the clear sector. For Anakin, the separation is both a test and an opportunity. Finally, he's not in Obi-Wan's shadow. Finally, he can prove that he's capable of leadership. Of course, things quickly spiral into danger. The young Jedis discover evidence of a plot involving local raiders and an invasion army from a nearby world. Opportunists eager to exploit Randor's chaos. Even more shocking, they uncover that Galen himself is working with the invaders, believing that their intervention will make him rich and secure. It's the kind of misguided idealism that seems to crop up often in the Republic, usually ending with someone being force pushed into a wall. Meanwhile, Curry makes a startling discovery in her own. Her tireless work in the contaminated zone leads her to realize that the bioagent has stopped mutating, the toxin has run its course, and people are no longer being infected. What was once a death sentence has begun to stabilize. Unfortunately, this revelation comes just as the invasion force launches its attack, targeting the Jedi Masters trapped within the contaminated zone. With no time to waste, Anakin and his fellow Padawans spring into action, working together despite rivalry, nerves, and the occasional lightsaber-related ego. They rescue their masters, foil the invasion, and expose Galen's betrayal in the process. It's a victory, yes, but a complicated one. The true danger wasn't the toxin, or even the invading army. It was the breakdown of trust between brother and sister, between master and apprentice, between ideal and reality. Through it all, Watson uses Randor's crisis to explore the deeper themes that define Anakin's journey: the fear of failure, the weight of expectation, and the painful lesson that doing the right thing doesn't always mean being understood. For Obi-Wan, the mission reinforces his growing realization that teaching Anakin isn't about control. It's about patience, compassion, and the acceptance that the Force sometimes moves in unpredictable, unnerving ways. By the end of The Way of the Apprentice, the galaxy feels just a bit darker, not because evil has triumphed, but because everyone involved has glimpsed how easily fear can twist noble intentions. And in Anakin Skywalker's case, lesson will only grow sharper in the years to come. While The Way of the Apprentice is written as a self-contained adventure, it subtly lays the groundwork for the greater tragedy of Anakin Skywalker and for the shifting nature of the Jedi Order in the years before the Clone Wars. For one, this story shows us that the Jedi Order, still steeped in bureaucracy and certainty, the mission to Randor, though humanitarian, exposes the cracks in the Order's philosophy. The Jedi Masters focus on containment and procedure, while the Padawans, particularly Anakin, lean toward empathy and action. The difference in approach becomes a recurring theme throughout Jedi Quest, foreshadowing the Order's fatal rigidity when confronted with the moral chaos of a coming war. It also sets the stage for Anakin's lifelong distrust of authority. His frustration with Obi-Wan and Ferris echo the same patterns that will later define his relationship with the Jedi Council. Every slight, every moment of doubt from his elders feeds the growing conviction that he's meant to do things his way. A mindset that, as history shows us, leads to, well, an unfortunate career change. Jude Watson's series also introduces a recurring ensemble of Padawans who continue to appear throughout the early 2000s expanded universe. Characters like Ferris Olin, True Veld, and Dara Fel Tanis. Ferris, in particular, becomes a major presence later on, especially in The Last of the Jedi series, which takes place after Revenge of the Sith. His rivalry and uneasy respect for Anakin adds layers of tragedy to his later story. The Padawan who once stood beside Anakin now survives to see what he becomes. There's also an interesting resonance with the Phantom Menace in Attack of the Clones. The tension between Anakin and Obi-Wan feels like an early rehearsal for their dynamic in Episode 2. Obi-Wan's measured patience set against Anakin's restless independence. Watson captures the growing pains of that partnership, showing how love and loyalty can coexist with deep frustration. Finally, The Way of the Apprentice reinforces the motif that runs throughout the prequel eras, the cost of detachment, where Curry's compassion for the sick, the Jedi's restraint nearly leads to catastrophe. It's an easy, quiet warning that the very philosophy meant to preserve the Jedi might one day be its doom. Jedi Quest: The Way of the Apprentice might appear on the surface to be a straightforward adventure for young readers. Jedi on a dangerous planet, a mysterious plague, an unexpected betrayal. But beneath that accessible exterior lies one of the most nuanced portrayals of Anakin Skywalker's early development in the expanded universe. What makes this book so quietly effective is the way it balances action with introspection. Jude Watson does not simply tell a story about heroes. She writes about the emotional weight of growing up under impossible expectations. Every choice Anakin makes, every outburst, every act of courage, every moment of doubt feels like another step down the path he doesn't fully understand but can't stop walking. Obi-Wan's struggle mirrors that perfectly. He's a man trying to hold on to the Jedi ideals that define him while learning that his apprentice may never fit them. It's not a clash of personality so much as a philosophical collision, one between tradition and destiny. Watson captures this tension with quiet precision, giving readers a glimpse into the human side of the Jedi, where doubt and love coexist beneath the robes and rituals. There's also something deeply haunting in the way the story resolves. Yes, the Padawan saved the day. Yes, the invasion is stopped. But the real lesson isn't victory, it's humility. The young Jedi learn that compassion isn't weakness, leadership isn't dominance, and that even the smallest mistakes can carry enormous consequences. For Anakin, that lesson is fleeting. He wins the day, but his pride glows brighter for it. The seeds of future tragedy are already in the soil. The Way of the Apprentice doesn't hammer that point, it whispers it. That's what makes it so effective. As the beginning of the Jedi Quest saga, the book does exactly what a first entry should. It lays a foundation of tension, character, and theme. It shows us not just what Anakin is, but who he's becoming. And it gives us one of the most human portrayals of the Jedi of the prequel era. It's a small story in scope, but a vital one in spirit. And for the readers who want to understand how a boy from Tatooine could become both savior and destroyer, The Way of the Apprentice is where that understanding truly begins. That concludes our exploration of Jedi Quest: The Way of the Apprentice. From Randor's biohazard to the delicate, sometimes combustible relationship between Anakin and Obi-Wan, we've seen how Jude Watson uses action and adventure to illuminate the human side of the Jedi Order, the frustrations, rivalries, and the quiet triumphs that shape a young Padawan's path. Anakin Skywalker is still a boy here, full of ambition, impulsiveness, and need to prove himself. Obi-Wan is still learning how to teach someone whose potential is both astounding and unnervingly dangerous. And through it all, we see the first glimpses of tension that will echo through the galaxy for decades. But fear not, listeners, the journey doesn't end here. In our next episode, we'll venture into the broader reaches of the galaxy with Timothy Zahn's Outbound Flight. This story takes us away from the Jedi Temple and into the stars, chronicling an ambitious exploration mission. The genius of Jedi strategists, the terrifying arrival of one of the galaxy's most cunning villains. It's a tale of discovery, danger, and the stakes that arise when hubris meets the unknown. So prepare your hyperdrive, charge your lightsaber, and join us next time as we continue to navigate the ever expanding web of the Star Wars universe. This has been your host, Rockwell, and may the Force be with you until next time.